Well, good morning, and again, welcome to the Office 365 US Partner Technical Community Call. And this month is on FastTrack Getting Started. And our agenda for today, we're going to just kick this off, being that this is our first call, with a little welcome from the community, and then we're going to just do a brief level set on FastTrack. There's been so much new on FastTrack, and we don't want to spend the entire call talking about FastTrack and the adoption offer. I know there's been a lot of sessions and a lot of coverage on that as well, but I know that some folks are still kind of coming in new, so we just wanted to do a quick level set. And maybe what really hasn't been talked about a lot is really the actual, all the new investments in the FastTrack Portal. And so we're going to have a demo of the FastTrack Portal and go through, and so you can see kind of what's inside. And we're hoping to leave, maybe about 5 or 10 minutes. So we'll see how the time goes for some Q&A. This is our team. We are the National Partner Technology Strategist team. That's your host today for the community. We're part of the US Channel Development Group. There's actually 6 of us that work across the US, and the team that you see here, Raven and Amanda and myself, I'm Michael Panciroli. We represent the team that's focused on Office 365. And more importantly, this is how you're able to just connect with the community. You see the AKA MS links up there on top of each one of these assets, and you're going to find information on building your Office 365 cloud practice and other useful information on the service and the training and other resources. You can sign up for the newsletter there. We just sent out our first one, came out yesterday, and so if you want to see next month, go ahead and join that, please. And then the Yammer group is right there in the center, and that's part on the US Partner Community group. And so this is a great way for you to be able to engage with us. This is where you're going to see most of our information come out. We're going to be having some practice building guides and resources that come out there. So please check there for the communications from our team. There's a lot of other folks at Microsoft that participate in that as well. So you can get your questions answered. And then finally, the US Partner Community blog. You're going to see some blogs on our monthly theme. So each month we have a theme, and this month is FastTrack. And next month's theme, we're going to be taking a look at identity management in Office 365. So things like Azure Active Directory, cloud identities, directory synchronization, password sync, and ADFS. And so we welcome your feedback on topics and what you'd like to hear, and so the Yammer group is a great way to be able to do that. So a couple of housekeeping things. We have the presentation that you can download in the handouts in the upper right-hand corner. That's those 3 little pieces of paper you see up there. You can download the slides for today. And then also we're going to plan on having a recording of this put out there, and again, you'll see where the link to that is on the US Partner Community. It's going to take a couple of days for that, to put that out there, but that's where you'll be able to find it. And if you have any questions today, we're going to go ahead and moderate that Q&A window. So you go up into the little Q&A section in the live meeting, and you can go ahead and ask your questions there, and we will try to answer them throughout the presentation, and then for those that we didn't get, we can just leave to the end. All right, so without further ado, I'm going to turn this over to Jeff Medford and Chris Hopkins, and we are very excited to have them with us, and we really appreciate them coming to talk about FastTrack. These guys are the experts, so I'm going to turn it over to them, and they can introduce themselves and tell you what they do at Microsoft.
All right, Michael, thank you. So my name's Chris Hopkins. I'm a technical product marketing manager here in the U.S., and one of my responsibilities is working with FastTrack and helping our partners and our customers in our field understand what it is and how they can best utilize it. So as Michael said, we're not going to go super deep on all the details. I have other calls, I have other decks, I have other recordings that we can use to reference that information. But we do want to talk about the basics. Where do we get started? What does deployment look like? What do we mean by adoption? And what are the details around those different phases? So what we're looking at for kind of the getting started piece, right? That's all pre-sales. That's up front before the customer purchases, before the customer starts deployment, obviously. And, the goal there is to get the customer or tenant set up, get them familiar with the environment, show them the scenarios, show them what they can do with Office 365, all those sorts of scenarios, right? And part of that getting started experience or getting started phase is also about the planning. Now, we'll talk a little bit later about the planning, but, just up front real quick, it's basically getting a deployment plan in place, talking with your customers to understand, what their goals are, what it is they're looking to onboard within the service. Now, within the deployment phase, there's a couple other items there around FastTrack specifically, and I'll dive a little bit deeper into this, but infrastructure preparation and service provisioning is basically the two items that we're looking at in that list that are covered by FastTrack and specifically onboarding. But let's dive a little bit deeper, show you the separation so you can kind of understand, what I'm talking about when I talk about FastTrack, getting started, deployment, onboarding, all these different terms, if you're not familiar with them. So FastTrack covers these aspects of the getting started and the deployment phases, right? All the way up from, pre-sales, trial through plan, all the way up to service provisioning and the user actually getting into the service. So for example, I would consider my onboarding complete when my users can log in to Exchange Online, start sending email, receiving email, using some of the other services like the My Sites and those sorts of things. Now you can see it stops at data migration. So I think, it's important to point out that everybody understands that FastTrack does not include any kind of data migration services. That's specifically, around scenarios that partners can help customers with, right? And again, another example of that would be, My Sites. Today you have stuff on-prem, there's some hybrid options, but, the customer might move all into the cloud and they want to move their My Sites all into Office 365 and take all that content with them. And that's something that the partners can certainly use to add value in that sort of scenario. And that's something that's not covered by FastTrack. FastTrack is something that's specifically delivered by Microsoft to make sure that we onboard the users from that customer into the service. And onboarding is making sure that, again, like I said in my example, I can sign into my mail and use it, right? I can sign into SharePoint Online and I can, work with my team sites, right? I can upload and download content from OneDrive for Business and my site. So it's making sure that dial tone is there and that everybody can access that. Now, the adoption offer piece, we're not going to go into a lot of details around that, but that's when we start talking about, the offer, what the offer covers, and you can see where that hits as part of, the deployment phase and the adoption phase. So, we fully expect, partners to work with their customers around the opportunity there to understand, are they moving mail? Are they moving data? Are they delivering other high value services on top of that to help drive adoption after they do their deployments? So FastTrack for Office 365. I like to think of it as, a new feature of Office 365, right? It's not, just to make it clear, we have the two different pieces. We have FastTrack, which is this new service that comes with the purchase of Office 365. And the offer is separate, right? And it's clear to understand that. The offer is a specific, starts on September 1st, ends on March 31st. It's a limited time scenario, where FastTrack is something that we've added starting September 1st that's just in the service and available to our customers that qualify. That service includes, of course, all the getting started content, signing up for the tenant, getting access to all those scenarios, and then, of course, working with the partner in the field to go through their deployment plans, all those sorts of scenarios. But it includes the onboarding functionality that the Onboarding Center, the Microsoft engineers, connect with you and your customers to make sure that dial tone is there and that everybody can get in and use the service. So it's a new benefit to anybody that has purchased Office 365. There's qualifying SKUs, which are all listed out in the terms and conditions document on the FastTrack site. But, if they buy 150 seats or more of E3, for example, and they're new cloud customers as of September 1st, then they qualify for the onboarding services that FastTrack provides as part of this new service. Now, we don't do everything for the customer. I think that's another point to make, especially when you're talking to your customers about what the onboarding service is. I hear a lot of people describing it as, we have Microsoft engineers that are going to just turn on all the services and get everything working for you and make sure that everything's in the cloud. They're not going to come in. This is remote assistance that's provided by our Onboarding Center. So they're going to need to understand what the customer's needs are, and that's where up front in the getting started phase, putting together that deployment plan so that those Onboarding Center engineers can look at the content that you've put in that plan and understand, what the scope looks like. What are they dealing with? What kind of services are we onboarding? How many users are we having to configure? Those sorts of things. And then they can work with you and your customer to help provide that assistance for Active Directory remediation and user provisioning, and synchronization, and other scenarios like that, other technical pieces that need to be put in place to make sure that when that dial tone is there, everybody can connect to it and use it without any blockers in the way. So again, just to be clear, the Onboarding Center isn't a service that's going to come into the customer site and configure everything so that they can just, the next day jump onto the cloud and start using it. Right? They're going to work with you and your customers to make sure that they roll through that process, right, in a very predictable manner, in a good time frame that makes sense for what you've specified for that customer in the deployment plan. Now, the getting started piece, I know that's probably, one of the things I get a lot of questions about just from partners. It's like, how do I get access to it? Where is it? What does it include? And Jeff will go into it a little bit more detail after I talk about the FastTrack pieces, but it's certainly one of the things that you want to jump into right away, right? It's a pre-sales motion. So start talking to your customers, get into the portal, and sign them up for the Getting Started tenant, which has all of this content pre-provisioned in it for them, right? And if you look here, right, the tenant itself is a tenant that has 250 trial licenses assigned to it, depending on which SKU that you choose out of the gate, the E3, A3, etc. But it spins up that tenant for you automatically, has those licenses assigned to it. It'll pre-provision some users that you can set up within the portal before you even kick off the provisioning. And then we'll automatically set up the content that you see here, the Getting Started content, which has the two main scenarios, content for IT pros and content for end users. All right, so it's a great resource that once that tenant gets provisioned, you can lead your customers through the content so they can understand what's there. Maybe there's content that they can use to help train their users once they get, into the deployment phase, and into the adoption phase. So let's take a real quick look at the portal. I'm just going to use these slides as reference. Everybody that's on the call that's a cloud deployment partner or cloud productivity partner, you should be able to log into the portal right now. If you haven't, go ahead and log in and see what that experience looks like. It's portal.fasttrack.office.com. And when you get in there, you can see around the slide it's going to ask whether you're a Microsoft partner or a Microsoft user. And once you pick Microsoft partner, it's going to ask you for your partner ID, your Microsoft Live ID, so that we can associate that and get you signed into the portal. Now, once you're in the portal, this is your one-stop shop for doing, all your provisioning of the content, so setting up a new tenant or provisioning getting started content out to an existing tenant. Maybe the customer already signed up for a trial through some other service, through some other site. They can bring that into the portal. They don't have to sign up for a different trial tenant here in this scenario, but bring that in, assign permissions. Maybe you want to get the account team engaged into this customer, the Microsoft account team, so you can come in here and assign permissions and do all these sorts of things. This is also the main point where you're going to redeem the offers for, the adoption offer that we'll talk a little bit about later. So registering your customers in the portal is a pretty simple process. There's a button that says Add Customer. You're going to click on that, and it's going to basically bring up this search experience. We're going to type in the name of a customer, and if you're working with the account team, you might have the TPID for that customer. You can put that in as well, and that customer is going to come up in there. I would certainly recommend that you work with your account team at Microsoft to understand who's going to register the customer, because Microsoft people can do it too, right? You might prefer to register them. Somebody on the account team might prefer that. Doesn't really matter. It's just whoever does that, they have to understand that you need to provide the appropriate permissions to the other individuals that need to access that customer through the portal at a later time. But you create the customer, get them signed up, and it's a simple form that you just fill out some basic contact information, put in your partner ID, and then you'll be associated and you'll be able to track that customer through the portal. This is the screen that I was talking about where you add permissions. So if you sign up as a partner, right, your partner ID, you probably don't need to do anything else with the section below where you see Add Partner MPN ID. If you're going to add people from the account team, the section above is where you're going to go in and put in the Microsoft alias of the people that you want to add to that particular account, that particular customer profile. So setting up the SSPs and the TSPs and the account managers and those sorts of things to get access to that view when they sign into their portal. To get to the Getting Started content, to set up their tenants or provision content to their existing tenant, you simply go to the Provision Content tab in the nav window there, and there's a few questions around what type of tenant do you want. Do you optionally want to upload the corporate logo for that particular customer? And then are there specific users that you want to pre-provision into the tenant? And you can fill out that form and add, users and their roles like, IT pro or business manager, those sorts of things. And when you kick off the provisioning process, depending on which of those options you choose, new tenant, we're obviously going to go out and create a brand new Office 365 tenant based on E3 or A3, whatever you choose in that list. And then in addition to that, add the Getting Started content into that brand new tenant. If you bring an existing tenant in, you might need to sit down with the customer to do that, because we're going to need to know, some administration information about that tenant. So who's the administrator? What's their password? Because you have to submit that to that provisioning process so that they can get access to the tenant and provision all that content in there through an automated process. So just keep that in mind. Both options are available. Bring your own tenant or start off with a brand new one. Now, the only other thing before we move on that I'd say about this is that if you're creating a new tenant for your customer through this process, definitely message it as their production tenant. So don't go in there and pick some made up company name for the name of the URL, because you definitely want to position this as this is a tenant where we're going to put in our content. You're going to work with the scenarios. You're going to do some of your own testing and playing around with the services. And then once you purchase, we're just going to roll this tenant forward, add your licenses to it, your production licenses to it, and just keep on going right into deployment and usage. So, we've had a couple customers that have wanted to do that with a tenant that they've set up as their trial, but of course they pick some name like, test 123 or something like that for their tenant URL. And then once they go into production, they have users seeing that URL and they want to get it changed, and it turns into a giant mess. So just make sure that it's clear up front that, hey, let's pick the right URL that makes sense before we kick off this tenant provisioning scenario, so that we don't have to deal with any of those issues down the road later when it doesn't match and they want to change it, or any of those things. The deployment plan, you've heard, if you've been on any other calls about FastTrack, you've heard a lot about the deployment plan and getting a deployment plan put in place for customers right up front. So I think it's important to the process that I kind of talked to our partners about is get into the portal as soon as possible, register the customer, and start that preliminary deployment plan. It's probably not a start scenario. It's probably like you can sit down in 20 minutes and fill it out completely. There's a bunch of just basic questions in there about which workloads do you plan on utilizing, who's your project sponsor, who's the project manager, who's our main contact for this, who's our main contact for that. So it's a bunch of just basic information that really the Onboarding Center is going to use to understand who's doing what and what are we doing. Like, what is the goal? What are we onboarding throughout the deployment process? So register, second step, get in there and start filling out that deployment plan and get that complete. And then I would say, talk to the customer and get their tenant going, and then provision that getting started content and walk them through that scenario. And last but least, the adoption offer. So we haven't gone over the details of the adoption offer. I think, I recognize a few names. Some of you have been on some of my other calls, but this is, again, the one-stop shop. So we've set up the customer. We've worked through the deployment plan. We've finished all of our tasks. Customers hitting usage, we're driving that. Come into the portal and sign up for the adoption offer. So if you click on the offers tab at the very top, you'll get access to the form that you need to fill out and the process that runs through to get you access to the Office 365 adoption offer. So just want to make sure that you're familiar with where those pieces are located within the portal and kind of that high-level process of what that looks like. And so I think at this point, I'll go ahead and turn it over to Jeff, and he'll introduce himself and talk to you about the Getting Started content.
Thank you so much, Chris. So my name is Jeff Medford, and I'm a technical product manager, and I run FastTrack from a worldwide perspective. So the Getting Started, onboarding, content, FastTrack Portal, and those things, and work very closely with Chris as really the subject matter expert in the US to make sure that we're creating things and doing things and helping with process that really helps drive business within your pipeline, and then also gets people smoothly onboarded to the service, hopefully with you as the kind of primary contact for the onboarding center that moves them through. So we're going to talk a lot about the content side, getting started, and then into some of the deployment planning, as that's the focus of the call. And getting started really is a experience for the customers. And the intention of getting started is so, and I think Chris said it in a lot of different great ways, is to get your customers moving towards Office 365 during your sales cycle. What we've seen, in the past 5 years of going and talking about the cloud to our customers is that it's not real until they actually can use it. We see it in competitive situations. We see it in our own, on-premises situations where customers don't really understand what the cloud is or how it can help them. So getting started really has been driven from very early experiences for customers, trying to help them understand not only what the cloud and Microsoft's, big productivity cloud can do, but put it into very simple terms so that someone who's trying to drive enthusiasm and who's probably your best stakeholder internally at the customer can really leverage Office 365 as you're trying to present the business value. It truly is the business value side. So when you are doing a mech or you're doing a mod demo, this should be the call to action. When the customer asks, what do I do next? How do I go forward? What does deployment look like? The answer to those questions, and really where we try to focus a ton of effort and investment, is, well, you'd get started. You'd use FastTrack Getting Started, and let me do that for you. And if you have logins to the FastTrack portal, you can do that really easily. If you're not a cloud deployment partner or CPP, you can actually do it direct from the web. So I'll go into that a little bit as we do our demonstration. And it starts with some end user scenarios, and these are not heavyweight mod hero demo or Microsoft demo or CIE or MEC, all the acronyms I can throw out. These are not heavyweight big demonstration pieces of content. These are very specific. A ton of research has been done with the Office 365 team, with some SharePoint team, with Link, across all of our services to try to come up with the very core scenarios that customers use to get started and to show them some of those core scenarios. So when we see this as a function of the customer's first steps into Office 365, that's truly how we try to position it. So for end users, they have training videos. It's there to foster ideas and creativity. It's there to show them a little bit of what's possible. And the analogy I use is that you walk into a model home, or you walk into a home that's been staged a little bit, and then you start to be able to picture yourself and how you would place your stuff, where you'd put your TV on the wall. What are some of the things you would do to change it? If you walk into an empty house, and if anyone on this call has ever done a trial on Office 365, it's just an empty house. You have to be very creative to get things started from there. So what we're really trying to do is help people see the vision, walk through, and get started with Office 365. So it highlights the end user scenarios, but we also have a very core experience for IT pros. And from my side, from my perspective in the Office 365 worldwide marketing team, my audience is IT pros. I'm a technical product manager, and I want IT to be able to deliver Office 365 to all their users. And when I think of IT, it's not just the IT guy sitting in a business or the IT team or a group of people. It's our partners. And our partners, in so many ways, are the IT staff for our customers. So when I say getting started for IT, this is getting started for anyone who's technical, anyone who's leading the technical charge within an opportunity of Office 365, and really delivering content, steps, tasks, technical information, and actions that someone who's driving this technically can really help do. And that gets us in a little bit into the deployment planning, but that is really what the drive is from getting started in technical. And you see the screenshot there. It's change management. It's apps to help the people provision content. Staff members can follow this. We are working very closely with our success.office.com counterparts to make sure that all of the great information that comes from the new Success Center is flowing into the FastTrack content. So you'll see some of those updates made very quickly. So from a demonstration, from the Getting Started experience, I'm going to start from the portal, but I'm going to quickly share my screen. And so what you see here, hopefully, and if you're not seeing it, Chris, if you could yell if anyone's not seeing it, but what you should see here is the FastTrack portal. I'm logged in as a partner, and this is where I start my journey with my customers. But I wanted to also show that deploy.office.com is where we land all of this information, whether it's a customer, whether it's partners, whether it's our field. This is every bit of information we can possibly put without confusing people, that really walks through that continuum that Chris showed, from trial to plan to onboarding to migration. So you'll see each of these as we go, getting started. That's what the customer would do to get started. If you don't have access to the FastTrack portal, this is where you can go and get your FastTrack content. But if you have access to the FastTrack portal and you are a CDP or CPP, we've built a special experience for you to allow you to track, to allow you to manage, to allow you to do offers, to allow you to connect with the Microsoft account teams. So I wanted to show the public-facing, anyone can do this site and allow you to see that, whether it's deployment plan or planning services, more information on onboarding, migration, even from an adoption perspective. I talked about that success center, making sure it's very clearly stated across the way that we move across that continuum for a customer's experience. But you have the FastTrack Portal, and you have the ability to be welcomed on the welcome page, go and look at planning, getting started. Chris showed you some screenshots, and what I want to really line out is I'm searching for a customer, and I'm searching for a customer that's in our managed account list, that is a managed account by Microsoft. You know, we have many, many, many customers that are not on that list, but I would expect partners who are working with anyone who has any kind of VL agreement or any kind of, work in the US that is in CTM or the CA space, that you'll be able to find your customer from here. So I have a single demo account called Contoso Demo. Every other customer in this list is real, and we expect you to be able to find your customer. But if you can't, because maybe it's SMB, maybe they've never purchased from Microsoft, maybe they're completely outside of the bounds of the universe of customers that we work with in the corporate accounts or EPG space, you can always add them. So we didn't stop you from adding them, but what we really want to make sure you do is find your customer and work from there. And as Chris said, that's probably what our field is already doing. So if you have a customer you're working with an account manager or SSP on, they've probably done that before. But you find a name, add your customer, go in, you'll see that it has the TP ID. You can add your new customer. The customer details, title, first name, last name, street, city, this is all the customer information. So you want to make sure that that's not your information, it's customer details. And that gets you started with a customer. And once you've created that customer, you simply go into My Customers and you get a list of the customers you're working with. And when that happens, you're able to then walk through the steps, walk through the scenarios, and go through what's possible. And I seem to be having some refresh issues here. I don't know if it's my shared screen or if it's my my actual remote desktop that I'm doing here. But I'm going to go back into the FastTrack portal and show everyone what that actually is. Log me in, go to my customers, and I see my list of customers. So these could be attached to my MPN ID. So if there's multiple people within your organization that use the same MPN ID, you'll see each other's here. You can work together, you can share them. And I'm going to go into this migration team, which I see is already in pilot, and I can see that I've provisioned content. So when I look at the provisioning status, I've already provisioned. But any new customer that I want to start with getting started, I can simply start that through. So you see now one that's provisioned and already going. Contoso Trading is not provisioned and is not going, so I can go to provision content. And again, select commercial, education, that's specific content for commercial customers, and for education, that will create the A and the E3s. Government's a special case. In the US, you're not allowed to do government trials on the GCC environment. So if you have a government customer, make sure and contact your Microsoft representative. But we do allow for you to bring your own tenant on top of government trials. So I'm going to click commercial. Again, I can browse and upload an image. That image would be displayed in the customer's SharePoint site/FastTrack in their actual product. Here I can add users. So I've already added Dan Jump, who is my customer name, and I can add Karen Berg. And you'll notice these names if you use MEC, but this will be your customer's name. So it would be people who you want to engage from a customer perspective. And I think it's migration team. The role that they play and include them. And what that does is, you know, you've all probably signed up for a trial and you've probably got the welcome emails, and they're not very specific to what we're trying to do. But if you put them in here, you start the provisioning process from here with these, they'll get a special FastTrack email, which points them to the content, points them to the right location, points them where they need to go. Again, existing tenant, new tenant, kind of what Chris was talking about, but now seeing it in a live demo. Selecting your country will put you in the correct data center, and this is the US call, so it makes it pretty easy for there. And then tenant name, and again, this is production. If you are doing tenants for customers that have tests or anything else, we will not ever extend them, will not ever look at them as production tenants. Your field representatives will not see that as a valid FastTrack entry. So when you're working with a customer on a new tenant, please make sure you all work with them on that tenant name. Partner of record ID, if applicable, it's applicable to all of you. So put your POR ID in there, and we'll automatically assign it as part of that. Phone number is very easy. That's for the verification code, and then you get on your way. So what does it look like from the actual customer perspective? Well, once you click through this, provisioning starts. It usually takes an hour or two, and then you can get an email that says, welcome to Office 365. And what it does is it links you to your actual tenant. And what you'll see up here is I have a site collection that was created. We only push content into a single site collection. But in that collection, sites/FastTrack, anyone you already put in, when I just showed you the click-through of who to put in, already will have access to this. There'll be audience targeted for this. And anyone who's listed as IT Pro will immediately be able to see Getting Started for IT. We provision two things, and two things only, right off the bat, and that's Getting Started for IT and Getting Started for the end users. These scenarios that you see here, finance and accounting and more that I might add later, those are not automatically provisioned because we want to let you, the customer, the people within their business, choose how they want to provision some of those scenarios. But what you see when you first land is scenarios, do-it-yourself click-throughs of how to, from an IT Pro perspective, how you create site collections, how you enable users, how you do search queries in SharePoint. You'll see migration and education management. So if you're utilizing migration from Microsoft, you'll be able to see that. Onboarding information, implementation tasks, training videos, etc. So as an IT Pro, this is your landing page. You start here. This is where your customer IT Pro or yourself would get going. You see this management button, and that's critical because I'll show you what that does. Management, it's highlighted along some of these task lists, but your management app is where you can choose other scenarios. So we have finance and accounting, internal communications and HR. I just clicked this right before we came in so that you could see that this is now provisioning. Information technology, I could add legal, and R&D and sales are both, or R&D is something I've provisioned, sales and marketing is something that's currently provisioning. So I have a place to go as an IT Pro. It's a SharePoint app built into the catalog, built into the customer's experience that allows me to continue with this provisioning of content. I can see all the guides. I can click on them and view the guide, all the videos that will be provisioned, and even the do-it-yourself click-throughs. So each one of these, before I click the button, I can see all the resources that are going to land. So from an IT perspective, that's the first thing you go do. It's the first thing you do to enable your customer. We're going to get to planning tools in just a minute. Getting started. This is Getting Started for end users. You can see that Getting Started has Make the Switch to Office, video learning, example documents. And what you'll notice is this is in the customer's experience. This is in the product. So the first time they go, we're utilizing SharePoint as this place for customers to be able to interact, for them to see the value of the service, store, sync, and share, keep everyone on the same page, stay on track, and deliver on time. These all match the scenarios which are built into the Customer Success Center. So when you think of end user content, whether it's videos, guides, what are the customers that we see really trying to do when they get started? This is now part of the experience. So you have do-it-yourself guides as far as how to deliver co-authoring, how to use versioning, take advantage of OneDrive for Business. All of these are driven from videos. None of this is stored in the customer's tenant, so it's not taking their space. It's through an SSL into Azure, into our own blob, where we have everything stored and up to date. So I can view the guide, I can work through any of these scenarios, really trying to give the customer a great first experience. One of the other things you might have seen is Make the Switch. All of this is coming from Office.com. So if you've ever spent time on Office.com and searched for the most popular downloads, we have them now in the customer's experience. So whether it's kind of highlighting that they can join webinars, whether it's making the switch to Outlook, to Word, some of the top questions we get is, how do I use the new Excel? How do I use the new Outlook? It's there. Another piece, video learning. You see here, it's a video learning. None of these videos are pushed into the customer's tenant, so it's not taking space, and they're all curated from Office.com. So we've been working with our Office.com folks worldwide to be able to gather the metadata to say, I can search for Word, I can search for Excel, and these are all videos that are immediately streamed from Office.com without having to go search around for them on the internet. So this is available also directly in the tenant for the customer to experience when they're getting started with Office 365. The next piece is one of those scenarios. And you saw finance and accounting. I'll go to finance and accounting. And like I mentioned before, it's the model home. We're not trying to flip every switch and change everything and load every piece of content. What we're trying to do is say, here's a scenario, crunch the numbers together. Here's the video that talks about the scenario. Here's how to update spreadsheets, Power BI. You can close this at any time, and you simply are using SharePoint. And we've loaded just some of the very simple guides and some of the very simple examples so that people can see, how does Excel Web Access work? What is it I need to upload to be able to drag and drop into this? So at any time, you can see the scenario, close the scenario, and then actually do the scenario based on the video and based on what we've played. So very trying to be transparent with our customers and say, these are what we know you're looking for, not trying to build out entire architectures and infrastructures and in web content management, but trying to give very simple getting started scenarios so that you can help your customer while they're in your sales cycle. You can help them adopt early to move through deployment. And it makes it a much better experience. And we have seen thousands of these over the last 2 years. We've seen great success. We have partners who are using this as strategic points in their sales cycle. Our field is driven and metriced on FastTrack Getting Started. So it's really a point in which our field and our partners come together to give our customers a great experience. So what does that all look like coming together? This is the customer experience. You clicked a few buttons in the FastTrack portal. One of the things I wanted to show you is that in this IT, I saw planning tools. And remember, I'm in the customer's SharePoint site. It's a SharePoint provider-hosted app. We are doing deployment plans directly through here. So we talked about prelim deployment plans, detailed deployment plans. I can download a sample plan as a customer. So even if I was a customer, never talked to anyone in the world, I'd be able to come do this through FastTrack Getting Started, work through a deployment sample plan, work through my own deployment plan. And I can see here some of the core questions. Project owner details, the things that Chris was talking about. What is actually going to be used? Sponsor details, and I'll try to click through and get to some more than just contact details. But we also are going to ask you, okay, where are you coming from a technical perspective? Where are you going from a onboarding lead, help desk, and then we start getting into the business scenarios. And it's incomplete. I need to work my way there. We also see in this hover over, we have current environment. So you can work from not only the who's who in the customer, but you can work all the way into what are you currently using, current state assessments, being able to actually plan a deployment. And it's not about systems and technology and that. It's really about customer intent. When are they going to deploy? Who is the lead for that? And these things flow directly into your FastTrack portal. So I wanted to show you from the customer perspective and then bring it all the way back to the FastTrack portal. In the Contoso trading, and I was just in the migration, so I'm going to go back to my customers list. I'm going to go back to that migration team. So I provisioned that getting started content. I gave it to my customer. I worked with them on all of the great getting started content. Maybe I asked them to fill out some of their deployment plan. When I go into my FastTrack portal, I have the same exact information. You can see I was 53%. It jumped me right to the help desk lead details right where I was. It shows me what the customer or myself has filled out, or maybe the SSP who's involved with this customer. And I can work directly through this deployment plan and keep going next into the next steps and keep going. I can export that into a really great looking Word document, which ad hoc completely fills out all the questions I asked and is a customer deliverable. So it immediately, ad hoc, on demand, creates a Word document. It's got all of our great branding. It's got all of the questions you asked and all the answers, and it goes directly into Word, so you can format it, customize it, send it to your customer. That deployment plan is really a critical piece of how we get to onboarding. So when you're working with a customer, when you know they're over 150 seats, when you know they're going to purchase and be eligible for onboarding, doing that deployment plan is really critical, and it's that shared experience. You can do all of that from within the FastTrack portal. You can have your customer work with you on it. You can work with the Microsoft field on it, and you can see the business scenarios that we're trying to drive. All of this generates the plan into a Word document that's immediately deliverable to the customer. So from a full kind of left to right experience, you can get your customer started really easily. You can work them through your sales cycle. You can give them really great content and experience that's not just an empty box on Office 365. And then you can work through your deployment plan. And I'll talk a little bit about that. I'm going to go back to my slide deck. And talk a little bit about deployment planning. And the more details is on deploy.office.com. We talked about FastTrack for the last almost 2 years and really trying to help accelerate the sales cycle and show customers that the Office 365 is much easier than we have been telling them in the last 5 years. You can get started quickly. You can move into the cloud. There are technical things you need to think about, though. And that's where deployment plans come into play. And you'll see that the investment side on FastTrack really is also coming towards that deployment plan, because we want our customers understanding not why they shouldn't use the service and maybe if it has these different things. We want them to understand how they fit into the service quickly and easily. So as we go through, and you see here, outline your project team's roles, document your current environment, our customers are always saying, I need help with planning my deployment. Every customer I've talked to, and I mean this, comes and says, what do I do next? How do I do it? And so what I just showed you with deployment planning, that kind of cohesive experience between you and the customer, the Microsoft field, you can get paid for that. So your customer, if they have software assurance benefits, they have vouchers for days. And we have aligned these programs to FastTrack to allow for a 3-day and a 10-day deployment planning service offering. If you want to work with your customer on planning their deployment, doing a deployment plan, getting all that information from them in a very easy to read and consumable format, we have all of the guides, we have the delivery guide, we have the decks, we have the Word doc, and it's all available on deploy.office.com, deployment planning services. Any partner whose cloud productivity can deliver, obviously Microsoft Consulting Services also delivers this, deployment planning. And there's a 3- and 10-day voucher that you can use with your customer to be paid to do deployment planning. And it all happens through the FastTrack portal and is all integrated into the experience that I just talked about. So I know I just blasted through all of that, but it comes back to this. It comes back to getting started. Get your customer on trial, give them a great experience. That trial always should move to production. No throwaway work for customers. Our customers are fed up with the term pilot. They are very loud and clear that the term pilot means throwaway work. It means I have to pay for something I'm not going to use in production. That is the reason why we call it FastTrack Getting Started. It's very clear. It's what the customer does to get started. And when you get started on something, you continue to move on that. There is no throwaway work in the world of Office 365. We truly want to build that trial. We want to build them into that experience. We want to do planning on top of the experience and then move them successfully into onboarding and deployment so that at the end of the day, the customer knows what they purchased, they know what they want to do with it from their business perspective, and they want to deploy these various services They want to take the time and effort and energy to truly get onboarded to Office 365. So that is the kind of cohesive nature we're really going for. I know that Chris does a ton of different calls that are specific to onboarding, specific to adoption. We wanted to really track back and try to help you understand the resources that are part of getting started and the way to really kick off a great experience with your customer. So if you have questions, resources are there. FastTrack.office.com is the same as Deploy.office.com. You have onboarding information, you have adoption information, you have getting started information. If you want to, go further with the portal, please do. If you're cloud deployment or CPP, you can immediately gain access to the FastTrack portal. Not only do you do the things that I just showed, that's where we land offers, that's where we land everything else that you can engage with your customer. From a resources perspective, I know they showed this at the very front end, but US Partner, incentives, FastTrack, all together. So I am going to give it 5 minutes at the end here to make sure, and I'm just going to read a couple of the QA questions. If a partner is authorized to deliver SDPS, yes, they can. So supported is SDPS, LNE DPS, and Office 365 is a subset engagement through those programs. So please do. We are, we are working with a ton of partners right now to make sure that we've not only aligned the process of FastTrack, but also the alignment of the vouchers and what you need to do to gain those vouchers and redeem them. We've tried to make it very easy through the FastTrack portal for you to create a deployment plan, export an XML file, and upload that into the VVR system for DPS. So we're working on all across the angles to try to make it easier for you to utilize FastTrack. And I'm going to sit for a second and hope that there are some questions coming in. I know there's got to be some as we plowed through a ton of content. Not seeing anything yet, so we'll hang out. And for the next 3 minutes, since there are no more questions, we'll just hang out here and stay on the line. And I didn't know if you wanted to close it out.
Stop the recording.
Yep.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Jeff, and also to Chris. It's great information, and thanks to all of you who joined the call today. Just as a reminder, the slides are available up in the little handout there. And take a look for the recording on the Yammer group that was mentioned previously. Jeff didn't make any jokes about Throwback Thursday and live meetings, so we're actually looking to kind of move the series. There isn't a sign up for next month's call, but we're going to try to move that over to Academy Live, and we're working on a way for you to be able to kind of sign up once and get subscribed to the whole series. So look for that one as well on Yammer. So
too much content for jokes.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate it. Looks like we have one more question. A lot of them have been knocked down throughout the call, and we just have one more. I've activated my maps in March. How can I add this to my Office 365 site content?
I have. This is Jeff. I don't know because I don't know about maps.
Anybody else? Can you take that one, Amanda? You know what that one is?
Yeah. So for Office 365 site content, I'm not sure I quite understand the question. So with maps, you do have internal use rights for Office 365, so you can start playing around with it. And it's a great program to get started in building out your skills with Office 365. For the specifics of the FastTrack portal and to get access there, what you can do right now is go to the deploy.fasttrack.com site, and that does have all the content for FastTrack. If you're looking to get into the portal, which was that specialized portal experience that Jeff was walking through, where you register the customer and you have access to the planning and deployment plan that goes directly to the Onboarding Center, that part would require a cloud productivity competency.
And I think I just answered that also. You can go to deploytooffice.com/getting started, and you will be able to click the Get Content Now and just put that into any tenant you want. So whether it's IUR, whether it's demo tenant, whether it's your production tenant, you can always just add that content to it from there.
Okay, he says that's what he was looking for. And then there's one final question. We've got a minute left. If a client has an existing Office 365 tenant and you choose to bring the FastTrack content in, does a new tenant get created, or is it a new site collection added to the existing tenant?
It's a new site collection called FastTrack, and that's the only thing we touch.
All right, great. Well, thanks so much again, everybody, for joining the call, and have a great rest of your day.
Thanks all.
Thank you.